So today's webinar, of course, is the amazing emergence of brood X cicadas coming soon. Oh my gosh, we're on the right at the cusp of it. We were talking that some of them are coming out in other places, and it's not they didn't synchronize their emergence, let's just say. So it's interesting that if you're a road trip type of person, maybe you could follow the emergence as it goes. We'll find out more. So I'm excited about this talk. So as you know, if you've been here with us before for Woodland Wildlife Wednesdays, well, I guess I should have introduced myself. Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm so rude. I'm sorry. Take it for granted that you join us every month. So my name is Agnes Kedmanets. Hello. I work for University of Maryland Extension, and I coordinate the Maryland Woodland Stewards Program. Well, I co-coordinate the Maryland Woodland Stewards Program, and I coordinate the Maryland Delaware Master Logger Program. So what I think is so special about my job is that I have landowner information to share, and then I have professional information. I think having both of those perspectives for the people that I serve are really great, because I can talk to professionals about what I'm hearing about forest landowners, and I can talk to forest landowners about what I'm hearing about the forestry professionals. So I feel really special with my position. So if you ever want to talk forestry, hey, I'm your girl. You can find me at University of Maryland. So, okay, that was my introduction. So as I was saying, the webinar is being recorded. So the benefits of registering is you automatically get the free quarterly newsletter, Branching Out. That's where you're going to find out about more events that we're offering and other events in our area. If you don't want that newsletter, hey, maybe you get too many newsletters. That's cool. Just email Pam. You see the email addressed up there, pthomas@umd.edu, and just put in the subject line, no events. Well, I know already I have comments and questions right now, and Lindsay, our speaker, has not even started. So if you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat box that's found at the bottom of your screen. It's that bubble. You guys are probably familiar with what the text box looks like. It looks like the Charlie Brown bubble when they're saying stuff. So please put your comments. We're going to save those comments and questions till the end, and Lindsay, our speaker, and I will have a conversation based on your questions. So keep them coming. We're excited about that. So let me advance my slide. There we go. Oh, I went back. So our presentation today is this spring, we will be lucky to witness the emergence of brood X periodical cicadas. After 17 years under the ground, the periodical cicadas will emerge by the trillions in 15 states and Washington, D.C. Join us and learn about their fascinating life cycle, how they contend with predators, and what to expect in mid-May. Here we are in Maryland. So we wanted to find out where in Maryland you are. Where are you from? So I'm from Talbot County. I live in Talbot County, so I'm in Eastern Maryland. Lindsay, what part of Maryland are you in?
I'm in North Baltimore County, maybe 10 miles from the Pennsylvania line.
Nice, yeah. So it'll be interesting to hear where y'all are from, and you'll be able to see, hopefully Lindsay will give us the inside scoop of when they're coming out. Who knows what this presentation is going to inform us about. But, so thank you guys. That's so great. You guys, I appreciate finding out where you're from. In Oxford, where I live in Talbot County, warm and sunny out today. So I hope it is where you are too. So this is Lindsay Barranco. She is a University of Maryland College Park entomology grad student, entomology study of insects, who joined the Van Eggeldorp, she'll say it, Bee Lab in 2018. Prior to joining the Bee Lab, Lindsay worked with the Maryland Department of Agriculture as a regional
Apiary.
apiary
Yeah.
inspector, keeping beekeepers with honeybees, helping beekeepers with honeybee pests and disease problems. Her current research involves ground nesting bee preferences within varied soil substrates with a particular interest in wildflower meadows. So if you're thinking about a wildflower meadow, hey, maybe she's somebody you can pick her brain about. In addition to her interest in ground nesting bees, Lindsay is a member of the UMD Entomology Department's Cicada Crew, a group of grad students dedicated to learning about periodical cicadas, teaching others about periodical cicadas, and waiting for the periodical cicada emergence this year, this month, 2021. All right, Lindsay, we appreciate you being here.
Great. Happy to be here, Agnes. Thank you so much for that nice introduction. And I will share my screen.
Great. So how do you say that again?
How do you say what?
Beekeeping is a what?
Apiary inspector? Apiary, yep. So the Maryland Department of Agriculture has apiary inspectors to help monitor disease in honeybees.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
great.
There are a few that are very contagious and can wipe out honeybees. So that's what they do.
Wow.
So, so Agnes, just checking in, are you able to see that first slide of mine up on the screen?
You're doing perfect. You're doing perfect.
Okay.
You're great. I'm gonna go back in the shadows here, and I'll come back, Lindsay. This is gonna be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Agnes, for that kind introduction. And hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. As Agnes mentioned, I'm part of the University of Maryland Entomology Department as a graduate student. And this year, maybe 8 of us graduate students, all from different labs. So we don't study periodical cicadas normally. We have different insect interests in different labs. But we are taking a seminar, or have taken a seminar with Professor Mike Raup, featured there on the top left, also known as the bug guy, and Professor Paula Shrewsbury on the top right, on periodical cicadas. So a big shout out and thank you to Mike Raup, especially for many of the images and videos in the slideshow. And then a thank you to Professor John Davidson, there under Mike Raup, who did that beautiful illustration of the periodical cicada used in our Cicada Crew logo. So I'm very excited to be here to speak with you about these very fascinating insects. So before we get started, let's take a quick look at this Sir David Attenborough piece. It's about 4 minutes long, but I'm only going to play 2 minutes because particularly if you live on the Eastern Shore or places where you might not see periodical cicadas, you'll get a sense of how robust some of these emergences can be in particular areas. So let's take a quick look.
After 17 years underground, creatures are stirring. The nymphs of the periodical cicada have been biding their time. Now they march like zombies towards the nearest tree and start to climb. At first, there are merely thousands, but soon more than 1 billion swarm all over the forest. The biggest insect emergence on the planet is underway. They invade the upper branches where they climb out of their external skeletons and assume their adult winged form. At first, they're white and soft, but they have until dawn to complete their transformation.
So this is where I'll stop the video. And if you want to see it, you could see it's called Periodical. And I'm sorry, I always call them cicadas after hearing Sir David Attenborough, but Periodical Cicadas Overrun the Forest. It's part of his BBC production. And there's more to it in this little clip. Oh. So what are cicadas? They are insects. So first and foremost, they have 3 body parts and 3 pairs of legs, and they're called bugs. They're in the order Hemiptera, so they're in there with leafhoppers and aphids and true bugs. They have these sucking mouth parts. So insects have different mouth parts. Some have mandibles that chew up leaves. Others have siphoning mouth parts with like butterflies. But cicadas have these sucking mouth parts. And you see under the orange arrow, this sort of straw-like mouth part that this cicada has. And they bore that into trees and they suck on tree xylem. But most importantly, in terms of human interactions, they're perfectly harmless. So they don't sting, they don't have the ability to bite. If you were to pick one up, it might feel a little, prickly because of their legs have some, sort of sharp parts on their tarsus, but they're perfectly harmless. They can't hurt people. And they're often, associated with grasshoppers or locusts because they come out in such great numbers, I think of almost biblical proportions you see in that clip that we just watched. But they're not the same as grasshoppers or locusts who are in a different insect order. So historically, if we talk about when people first recorded seeing cicadas, it was back in 1633. When the second governor of Massachusetts in Plymouth, William Bradford, made note in his journal of a periodical cicada emergence. And he wrote flies like for bigness to wasps or bumblebees, which came out of holes in the ground and ate green things and made such a constant yelling noise as made all the woods ring of them and ready to deaf the hearers. So we know they came out of the ground all at once and they were very, very loud. And then we see illustrations like this one by Peter Collinson in 1764, showing us what they look like. And then if we go on to the next century, we can look to Benjamin Banneker, an African-American author, naturalist, mathematician, and also a Marylander. He observed 3 17-year cicada emergences, and he wrote in his journal, the first great locust year was 1749. I was then about 17 years of age when thousands of them came and were creeping up the trees and bushes. I then imagined they came to eat and destroy the fruit of the earth and would occasion a famine in the land. So people were very concerned about these periodical cicadas, what they would do because of their numbers and what they would eat. And there are journal writings about that. So there was also some confusion about periodical cicadas, because if you've read about them, there are the 17-year cicadas, but there are also 13-year cicadas that emerge. And there was confusion about, what are people seeing? Are they 13-year cicadas, 17-year cicadas? Are there 4-year cicadas if we look at the time period between 13 and 17 years? So there was great confusion for many decades about this. And Charles Marlatt, a federal entomologist with the USDA, kind of put his heart and soul into looking at periodical cicadas. He looked at pest insects in general, but he did field work that involved compiling county level maps for periodical cicadas in the eastern part of the United States. And he also was instrumental in organizing the broods. So we call them broods. We have brood 10 this year, which is the X, but he organized these broods and assigned each brood a year, starting in, I think it was 1893 and then 1894. So he started with brood 1 to 17 for the 17-year cicadas. And then he went on to assign years to the 18 years to 30 years for the 13-year cicadas in order to organize this so that people could speak about what they were seeing in a organized fashion. And this is still used today, this Roman numeral system of looking at these broods. So sometimes people call them locusts still, but locusts are grasshoppers. So we see this grasshopper on the left, and grasshoppers have these hind legs, these jumping legs, and they also have mandibles, chewing mouth parts that chew up leaves and plant materials. And unlike grasshoppers, cicadas do not have those same mouth parts. They suck tree xylem, so they don't damage leaves or plant material. The females can damage woody branches of trees, but they're not the same as grasshoppers, and they're not locusts. They are bugs. So you might ask, don't we see these cicadas every single year? Well, we do see annual cicadas, and on the left, you see this greenish brown insect. They take 2 to 8 years to develop, and sometimes the adults will emerge every year. They'll appear later in the summer, in late July to mid-August. Sometimes people call them dog day cicadas, and they're greenish in color, and their survival strategy is to fly very, very quickly. So that's why you might not see them, because they can get away so quickly. Unlike the periodical cicadas, which take 13 or 17 years to develop and emerge by the billions. So it's estimated that about 1.5 million per acre will emerge, and they appear now, right now, mid-May into June. They have these reddish eyes. Sometimes you'll see them in rare instances with blue eyes or white eyes. And they have this very pretty orange veination in their wings and black bodies. And their survival strategy isn't to fly fast because they're very klutzy flyers. Their survival strategy is called predator satiation. And that means that there are just so many of them that emerge that even after every animal out there that eats them gets their fill, there are still a great many of periodical cicadas that will go on and be able to reproduce. So they just overwhelm their predators and continue their populations in that way. So the 17-year cicadas, which are what we are seeing now with brood 10, are comprised of 3 different species. And you'll see on the left that they differ in size and color pattern. Their songs are different. Their habitat preferences are different. Sometimes they like different species of trees, or some species like more of a woodland area. And their genetics are different as well. And we'll give a quick listen to each one. So the first species is called Cicada septemdecen, and they have a very particular call. And when I say call, these are the males that chorus in the trees and call to the females for mating purposes. So let's listen to this first one. So that's the cicada that we just heard at the end of that Sir David Attenborough clip. Let's listen to Cicada cassini. And then Cicada septemdecula. Kind of a chirpy sound. So that we will hear in many of the areas around Maryland, all 3 of those species. And one thing to note is they are loud. So when these male cicadas are chorusing, if we had to equate it to something loud that we're probably all familiar with, we can look to the power lawnmower, which checks in at 100 decibels. The periodical cicada chorusing will register at 105 decibels. So they will be very loud chorusing up in the trees. In addition to 17-year cicadas, there are 4 species of 13-year cicadas. We have Cicada neotradecem, tradecem, tradecassini, and tradecula. And like their 17-year counterparts, they differ in size and color patterns. Their songs are all different. And this is so as the males are chorusing to the females of that particular species can find the male of that particular species and mate. Their habitat preference might be different. So some might prefer some trees species over others. And of course, their genetics are different from one another. So if we look at these 15 total broods, and there are 15 total broods in the eastern part of the United States, and periodical cicadas are specific, the 13-year and 17-year cicadas are specific to the eastern part of the United States. There are about a little over 3,000 species of cicadas worldwide. And there are other periodical cicadas in different parts of the world, like for instance, in Fiji, I believe there are 8-year cicadas. In India, there are 4-year periodical cicadas. But here on the eastern part of the United States, we are really fortunate to be able to see these 13 and 17-year cicadas broods come out. So there are 12 of the 17-year cicadas, and they typically are in the northern part of the eastern United States. The 13-year cicada broods are typically found in the southern states of the eastern part of the United States. And the two broods, there are two broods that have gone extinct. And we see in the red, that's brood 10, the one that Maryland is really at the epicenter at, which in brood 10 extends within 15 states and Washington, D.C., as far north as New York State, to the northern tip of Georgia, out to the Mississippi, Indiana, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Kentucky. Many states will see the emergence of the brood 10, 17-year cicadas. So you might ask yourself, well, what about this 13 years and 17 years? Why is there this synchrony, and why these prime numbers? And some of this is not known, but what researchers have figured out over the years is that synchrony in emergence guarantees that cicadas of a particular species find mates. They're emerging at the same time, and the females are able to find those chorusing males of their species. And there's also predator satiation, safety in numbers. They're able to, if they emerge in great numbers, are able to overwhelm their predators to the extent that many still survive and reproduce for future year emergences. And they have a very long life cycle. And this results when you're a cicada underground, sort of sucking the tree sap of roots underneath the earth. You're going to need to stay there for a long period of time in order to grow larger. And larger size equates to greater capacity for egg laying and progeny that can overwhelm predators. And with this prime number cycle, either 13 years or 17 years, you're less likely to have a situation where you're overlapping with other broods. In fact, if you play out that 13 and 17-year cycle with one another, the overlap only occurs every 221 years. And then with respect to 13 or 17 years, you don't really have any predators that live that long that can remember that this is an emergence that is going to happen after 13 years or 17 years. So they don't have predators that are sort of ready and waiting for them. They deal with them another way, which is by this predator satiation. So as I said, it looks like brood X, but it's really brood 10 because, of course, we know the USDA scientist Charles Marlatt assigned this number, its Roman numeral number, and Maryland is really at the epicenter. So many of our Maryland counties will see an emergence of periodical cicadas at different times. Up here in northern Baltimore County, I started seeing them come out last Saturday, the 15th. But you will see them in Carroll, Cecil, Frederick, Garrett, Harford, Howard, Montgomery, Prince George's, Washington County, Allegheny, Anne Arundel, Baltimore, but sadly not on the Eastern Shore and probably not in St. Mary's County. They haven't been detected there in quite some time. And this is because scientists hypothesize that during periods of glacial melting, that water was covering low-lying areas and cicadas were just not able to live in these geographic areas. So if you do want to see them and you're on the Eastern Shore, you might have to travel to the Western Shore to get a look at some. So let's talk a little bit about the life cycle. So they begin, you might see either holes in the ground about the size of your thumb, if you were to poke your thumb into soil, perfectly round for the most part, or you might see these mud turrets. And I started noticing these mud turrets in sort of wetter soil areas, maybe in mid-April. They have holes in them. They're like little mounds, or they're just little mounds. And if you lift them up, they cover this hole. And some of the cicadas that are lurking under the ground in cells about a foot down or 18 inches below ground make their way up, and they make these emergence holes, and they're ready and waiting to use them when the soil warms up to the ideal temperature. But they're just waiting under there in April, and they make these mud turrets to protect them from rainfall if the soil is too wet. And here's a little video clip of what you might see if you were to set aside leaf litter. Just some holes in the ground. And on the bottom right, you see a little nymph, periodical cicada. It looks like flat ground. This was under a flagstone that was lifted. You might see them lurking right under flagstones, getting ready to emerge when the time comes. So the nymphs in their last instar stage, which is their last nymph stage before they become adults, are waiting below the ground, getting ready to emerge. And they will emerge usually over the course of a week or so, once the soil warms up to a consistent 64 degrees. They'll emerge mostly at dusk after dark. You'll see them in the grass, and you'll see them starting to orient toward vertical objects, mostly trees. And here's a little image down below of one coming out of the ground. And you see these nymphs have these very broad forelegs. They're called fossorial legs, and these legs are kind of like shovels that allow them to scoop through the earth and move soil aside for these emergence holes. But they're a little slow moving and klutzy, and they'll make their way over to trees. So where you were to go outside, if you're not on the Eastern Shore and in one of the counties where they are emerging, you'll likely see many of them heading toward vertical objects like trees. So once they reach the tree, they will start climbing up slowly. That Sir David Attenborough video showed them going very fast. I haven't seen them moving that fast. Maybe that was fast motion, but they'll go up the tree, and then they will split their exoskeleton, and the nymph will come out. It will lean backwards in order to extricate itself from its exoskeleton. And then it'll kind of lurch forward again, grab onto the old exoskeleton, where it will wait for a period of time for its wings to inflate. And then it will stay in this state, this white kind of ghost state, where it's very soft, very vulnerable to predators. And it'll take about 4 to 6 hours, usually overnight, for this periodical cicada to harden, and for its wings to fully inflate, and for its exoskeleton to darken as well. The adults will live for about 2 to 4 weeks. And in that time period, and this is what the adults look like, very pretty with the dark bodies and the orange venation, they'll feed on xylem, which is tree sap. So they won't eat leaves, and they won't hurt herbaceous plants. And this is what they look like climbing up the tree. Just scurrying on up there. And then what'll happen is that the males, after they've hardened and darkened, the males will fly off into the treetops together to sing in the trees, to chorus, and to attract the females. And the males have the ability to do that because they have this structure called a timbal on their abdomen. And this timbal makes a rat-a-tat-tat sound, and it's the call to their specific species of female, trying to lure them over to the treetops to mate. And this is what they sound like. So the males make that sound, calling to the females, and then the females have a membranous organ called a tympana on their abdomen. The male also has a tympana to hear, but they use this tympana to pick up the sound of the timbal that their counterpart species male is making. The females are pretty good flyers, so they'll fly off over into the treetop where they hear the call to the chorusing males. And then if a particular female likes a particular male, she'll flick her wings, kind of a clicking sound, and then they will mate. And we see here down on the bottom on the left, you can tell the males from the females if you were to pick them up. The males have this kind of blunt abdomen on the left-hand side, and then the females have a pointier ovipositor. They're featured on the bottom right-hand side. And once they mate, the female will then go off and find a pretty good tree. Now she has to make a good choice of tree. Usually they'll go after younger trees, a tree that's growing well. And she wants to pick a good one because after she lays eggs in the branch, the young nymphs will fall onto the ground and actually suck up the tree xylem of that particular tree. So she doesn't want to pick a dying tree. And if she does, her offspring might be doomed. So she has to pick a good one. And she will find a twig of a correct size. So if we were to look at her fingers, it would be a little bigger than our finger. And she will take her ovipositor, which the end point has sort of a serrated end, and it also contains metals that allow her to cut into that twig and make this slit. And then she will lay about 20 to 30 eggs in small clusters, and then go down the expanse of that branch and make another slit and lay another 20 to 30 eggs until she lays all of the eggs that she has, which could be 400 to 600 total eggs. And that's what they look like on the bottom left. These eggs are kind of clustered, looking like small little pieces of translucent rice. They will mature in about 6 to 8 weeks. And once mature, the young nymphs, the first stage of their nymph life, they go through these 5 instar stages of nymph life where they get progressively larger. These young nymphs, the first instar stage, will hatch out. They will plop down to the ground. It doesn't hurt them. They'll kind of bounce on the soil. And then within a couple of minutes, because they're very vulnerable at this stage, they will quickly burrow into the ground, and they will feed on typically grass roots because it's right there at the surface. It gives them some time to kind of gather their strength and suck on those roots before they burrow deeper into the ground and suck on tree xylem, where they then begin that development period all over again. And either, depending on whether they're 13-year cicadas or 17-year cicadas, they begin that process of simply sucking on tree sap and emerging 17 years later. Pretty remarkable. So in our area, as I mentioned, periodical cicadas will emerge in May to mid-June. And different parts of Maryland have seen them. Like I said, in North Baltimore, I started seeing them in my yard last Saturday. But a couple of weeks ago, people were reported seeing them outside of the Washington, D.C. area in Prince George's County. So different places get warmer faster, and it might also depend on the warmth of the soil around particular trees where cicadas have burrowed underneath it. Remember, it has to reach 64 degrees before they'll emerge. So with cold weather and warm weather, there might be some variation to this in different geographic areas. But if we talk about what eats the cicadas once they emerge, the answer to that is pretty much everything. So raccoons and opossums and squirrels, birds will eat them, people will eat them and put them on different food items or saute them. And even the slowest of turtles can grab a cicada because they are terrible flyers and are really pretty much there for the taking. And in their final act, once they've all died off, you might see a bunch of these exoskeletons around trees or in your yard. They'll decompose. Other insects like these ants will get at them. And also their emergence holes will provide nutrients for the tree and also water filtration. So they'll provide nutrients to the trees and soil and food webs. So what about cicada damage? So as I mentioned, they won't harm perennials or herbaceous plants. They can really harm small trees, not so much the mature trees. They can really withstand this slit making that the female periodical cicadas make when they're putting their eggs in these branches. But small trees, vulnerable trees to damage include maples, oaks, hickory, fruit trees, nut trees, and so forth, hawthorn, black locust, dogwood, redbud. And this image down below on the left just shows what it looks like with the dead branches. It's called flagging. These slits can really damage the tree growth. So if anyone is interested in protecting their trees, sometimes people say, oh, how about spraying? Well, research has found that spraying pesticides is not as effective as netting small trees. The cost is comparable to the netting. And with spraying, you need to spray every 2 to 3 days. And realistically, there are just so many cicadas that you can't deal with them in that way. And also pesticides can be quite toxic to animals that eat the cicadas, which, as we've seen, is pretty much every animal out there will get them. And they can impact non-target insects like pollinators or other beneficial insects. So really, netting small trees is the way to go. People might choose to wait and plant young trees or shrubs, woody shrubs, until the fall, or they can cover newly planted trees with this netting. And the key diameter of the holes are 3/8 of an inch that keeps the periodical cicadas out, with the netting carefully cinched at the bottom. And if anyone's interested, you could check out our demo netting video, which is available on our Cicada Crew University of Maryland website. There's a couple of students put together some items and do a nice demonstration of how to net a small tree. So you might want to check that out. So you might ask, can I participate in cicada research? And the answer is yes, you can. You can get this free app. It's called the Cicada Safari app, and it's put out by a researcher, Professor Jean Kritsky at Mount St. Joseph University in Ohio. And this is really the modern day way of tracking where cicadas are emerging and mapping them. So it used to be, as I mentioned, in Charles Marlatt's day, that he at the USDA would send out postal mailings and go out and do field work and map these cicadas. But that stopped around World War II. And then there was kind of this lull. And honestly, I'm not sure how they mapped cicadas after that. I think it was just people making reports to I'm not sure who was doing it. Maybe it was particular researchers that took this on. But these days you can get this app, and this is really the way that people can participate, and more information can be uploaded because there are many people out there that are seeing many things, and a few researchers at a few universities cannot possibly go out personally and map all of these sightings. So it's very, very helpful to researchers who do work with periodical cicadas, tracking which broods are still in existence and to what extent they're in existence, and also get information as to whether or not any broods might go extinct in future years. So if you can participate, it's a big help to periodical cicada researchers. And if you're interested in learning more about periodical cicadas, you can see our Cicada Crew websites. We have some frequently asked questions on there and other resources, videos and images. Professor Mike Raup is also known as the Bug Guy, and he has a nice website called Bug of the Week. You might want to check that out, not only covering periodical cicadas, but many other insects. And there's also the Cicada Mania website, which is an interesting one to check out too. So I've really enjoyed being here today and speaking with you about periodical cicadas. Many of us who took this course found them to be very interesting. We didn't really know too much about them when we started out, but we wanted to learn, and we've learned just a ton about them. And they're such interesting insects. And for us as entomologists, dealing with insects that have relatively short lives, basically under a year, whether it's bees or mosquitoes or flies, whatever we might be researching as graduate students, most insects have these very short lives. So to be able to study something that can live so long underground for 13 or 17 years and is specific to our region, the Eastern United States, it's a real joy to be able to learn more about these insects and to learn how they survive and what they do. So I hope you're able to see some as you're out and about in your area. And as I said, if you're on the shore, Eastern Shore, not able to see some, maybe you can take a little trip over to the Western Shore and get a glimpse at some. And with that, I'll hand it back to Agnes, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. That was great, Lindsay. That was super great. You can leave your screen up if you'd like, or do whatever
Sure.
you like to.
Uh-huh.
Now, if we wanted to get in touch with you or any of your grad students, is there some way that we can reach you? I know I put your email address at the beginning, but is that something maybe if you feel comfortable putting in the chat for people if they want to kind of pick your brain a little more?
Sure. So I will put it in the chat, or I'll tell you what it is. It's lbarranc@umd.edu. It's LBARRANC@umd.edu. You can also get a hold of any of our crew. Oh, there's the chat. I see it now. Wondered where it went.
I got it. I'm on
Okay,
it.
got it. Okay.
I
And
know I forgot how challenging it can
oh,
be.
you always forget where the bar is.
So
Yeah.
I put it in the
And
chat there.
if you go on our Cicada Crew website at the University of Maryland Entomology website, you'll see us all on there, and there's a way to contact us on that website as well.
Okay. So you guys, she said some things there. The Cicada Crew website I put in the chat. So please look for, I labeled it as UMD Cicada Crew website, and you're going to see it there. Weebly.com, Cicada Crew, umd.weebly.com. So you're going to see that link there. I also put the link in for the Cicada Safari app and the bug of the week. And I just, I was typing and missed the last website that she encouraged us to. Can you repeat that last website you encouraged us to go to?
Oh, yes, that's the cicada. I'll leave this up. The Cicada Mania. So it's www.cicadamania.com.
Okay. I found it right here, you guys. Great. I was like, what am I doing? Oh, look at you just have that 4 more. Oh, you have it right there. Look
Yeah,
at that.
here it is. Yep.
Oh,
There you
great. That's a great slide. Okay, so you know what? I know you haven't been looking at the chat, but we have some excited people on the
Oh,
line.
yay.
Lindsay, I just want to let you know that people are pumped about the cicadas coming out. We have somebody here who was looking at the cicadas with her son this morning already and was really glad that it's being recorded so that he can watch it later. So I
Good.
think that's really good. And there's some worry, and I saw this already too. I saw if you're on Instagram, y'all, if you're on Instagram, K-Dubs, Kaydubs, the hiking scientist, is an entomologist for University of Maryland or University of West Virginia. And she also showed this, and somebody also expressed the same concern, is a lot of the cicadas that they're seeing emerging, have deformed wings. Is that something that y'all are seeing? Is that normal? You said this population, that's their defense. So they should have a lot. So just the percentages.
Yes. I can't speak to the percentages specifically, but I am seeing that myself. And that does happen because as they climb the trees in that last nymph stage, and then their back of their exoskeleton splits and they come out in that white stage, they have to kind of lean all the way back, like we saw in that photo, lean back, like way back, like they're almost doing a back bend out of their exoskeleton. And to extricate themselves, remember that they not only have this exoskeleton around them, but they have these things called spiracles, which are their air holes in their side of their abdomen. So the exoskeleton lines their internal trachea system as well. So they have to really peel themselves out of there. And then once they're done doing their back bend, they have to like lurch forward again and grab onto their old exoskeleton or the tree or whatever that you have and they have to be in that upright position in order for their wings to fill with fluids. And if they don't make it either all the way back and get out, or they don't make it so that they're hanging and their wings are hanging down in the back in the right position vertically, their wings won't fill up with the fluids that they need to fill up with. So you'll have those deformities, or they won't make it fully out of their exoskeleton. I am seeing the same thing on both on the trees where they're dead and they have deformed wings, or they're on the ground. So I do think there is a certain percentage that just don't make it out. But then you'll see many more exoskeletons just on the tree, empty, and they're up there. They're up higher in the tree, just, waiting for that period before they go off and mate. And you'll hear the chorusing, I would suspect, quite soon.
So is a solution for me to get my bike tire pump and help these guys out? Maybe give them a little air, pump up their wings a little bit? What do you think?
Well, sadly, there's nothing we can do about that. They need that internal fluid that comes within them, that's very specific to cicadas. So they really have to do it themselves.
And so when we see them, should we just leave them be?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We
So,
don't.
well, I have been known to move a couple out of the pathway. If I see adults sitting on the pathway, I'll put them on the tree. But I would, for the most part, just leave them be. I just move them out of the way so they don't get crushed on a walking path, for instance.
Just so that they get their prime eating those ones with the wings. This cycle of life is pretty interesting when we see those little flaws in nature. Is that a flaw? Maybe somebody's extra hungry this year.
Yes.
Wonder what the fox population is going to look like next year. Interesting.
Yes.
Okay, so that was good. So yeah, there's the wings. So this family is so excited. They brought in 2 nymphs this morning and they started to molt right away. So they're seeing it in action. They're seeing it in action right there. So they're really getting it. So this question, we noticed a few shells last weekend and today we saw the most emergence. Does this mean that we can still count on them continuing to come out the next several days? We want to enjoy them more because they have all come out. So how many days long do you think this will be? And what are some signs that the emergence is kind of dissipating?
Well, you will no longer see them crawling up the trees. You'll see many more old exoskeletons than you will see live ones. And you'll also be hearing the chorusing. So that will begin very soon. So in terms of the emergence, remember a lot of it is dependent on the soil temperature reaching that 64-degree mark. So depending on whether a tree is in full sun or in deep shade, there may be different soil temperatures, even in the different parts of your yard, that may dictate exactly when they come out. So for the most part, and this is just a general answer, they will emerge in most places over the course of a week's time.
Okay.
Until most of them have come out. Yeah.
So if I stick my meat thermometer in that ground, what number is the ideal? What am I rooting for the cicadas to come out?
It's 64 degrees soil temperature. Fahrenheit. Yeah. 64 degrees Fahrenheit. Great questions that people have. Yeah.
What about landscapers? So if landscapers are coming, so should I be worried about landscapers coming to mow the lawn? We have a lot of cicadas molting right in the grass.
Yeah, they are. I was lucky. I did my last mow right before Saturday, which is very lucky because now they're out. And I do notice that they are mostly in the grass in the evening coming out, but I am seeing some in the daytime too. So if you are continuing to mow, you'll probably kill some off. If you can wait a week, that's all it will take. If you see them emerging in your area, if you don't see them at all, I'd say quick mow, get that mow in before they start coming out. If you see them now, I would say, can you wait for a week? Because pretty soon they'll be all emerged and they'll be up in the trees. And that might be a better time to mow. That's a really good question.
Great. So people are wondering, is there a map of emergence? And if there is a map of emergence, do you have the link? Somebody's been seeing this map of emergence online and they wonder if we have the link to that handy. Is that
Yeah,
on your cicada crew
that's
website?
on the Cicada Crew website. If there are lots, there's a link called resources, and it leads to both the Cicada Safari website, which has a mapping element to it. And it also leads to the University of Connecticut, where there's a periodical cicada researcher named Chris Simon, who is involved in that research. And there are maps that that university provides as well. So
Okay.
yes, that's the place to go for the mapping information.
So if I want that map, I'm going to click on the link. That's the Cicada Crew, UMD Cicada Crew. It's up on the screen. It's in our chat. If you go in the chat, you can just click on it there. And then you're saying there's a tab on that website that says resources.
Resources, yes. And that will lead you to a whole bunch of resources, and some of those resources have to do with mapping.
Great.
And other websites that get further deep into that.
Ooh, so you might get more than you're expecting there. That's great. That'll be a nice surprise that you're going to get more maps than you can even imagine, I guess there. Okay,
And there
so
are lots of maps, but I will also say with the Cicada Safari website, that's like minute by minute logging in by ordinary people, citizen science work in the moment. So people are out there right now uploading their pictures, getting their sighting, the emergent sighting on the map. So you can see that's, I think, the most up-to-date and best site to take a look at.
oh, that's great. That's great. So all of y'all that are already watching the cicadas coming out, hey, we can share that knowledge through that website. So you're already thinking like a scientist. So, part of being a good scientist is collecting that data. So, hey, that's just the next step. That's great. That's great. Okay, we got a few questions here. Can we say that the emergence of brood 17 cicadas in Maryland will provide us the free service of helping decompact our compacted soil? Oh, so are they kind of decompacting the compacted soil?
Well, I can't speak to that specifically. I don't know too much about the soil texture or the compaction level that they can withstand. I do know just, I will say at an event last week, we had a program with some children at a library, and we were looking for emergence holes, and some of the soils seemed to be quite compacted around these trees. Now we couldn't dig down. We saw the holes. We did not, it was dry soil, so we didn't see the little turrets. We saw the holes that they had made. It was pretty compacted, and it was so compacted we couldn't get our trowels and shovels down into the soil, which was surprising because what we wanted to do was dig down a little bit, show the kids some nymphs that are sort of waiting 8 inches down, and then put them back. But it was so compact that we couldn't do it. So I do think they have the ability to make their way just observationally through compacted soil, although the soil that I've seen them at my place is not as compact. But I don't know research wise, I can just sort of share that anecdotally. I can't share it from a research perspective. But I do think that their emergence holes that they make and the water filtration that allows does, could potentially impact that compaction and make it perhaps less compact.
Interesting. So you brought up something there that I thought was neat. So if I dig down 8 inches and we're in a known cicada area, I might see some little nymphs, eh?
You
Well, that's
could,
neat.
yes, in their last stage. And this interesting, this fifth stage nymph growth that they're in is something that the 17-year cicadas reach at year 13. So they're down in their last, at year 13, sucking on Trees Island, they reach that last 5th stage, and they're down there for 4 years before they emerge, and then they come out and they shed that last exoskeleton.
Wow.
So researchers know a little bit of something about, at what point in their life development and their life cycle, they're reaching different nymph stages, and it's 1 through 5. Mm-hmm.
So then if I dig that 8 inches and I take a peekaboo, interrupt their little life cycle there, I should cover it back up and put it back, right? Like just kind of, kind of what I would do with any other kind of wildlife, little salamander, little turtle. I'm going to put it back where I found it. and
Yes.
make it look, okay.
Yes, put it back. And then you saw those very broad shovel-like front legs that they have. They'll make their way out through a hole.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so another question here. We planted 8 grow low sumac bushes in mid-April. They grow to be about 3 feet tall. Are they vulnerable to damage during the cicada season? They were
So any type of woody shrub or immature tree are susceptible. So if it's something that you're worried about and it's woody, if it's herbaceous, with a green stem, not a woody stem, they won't bother that because they don't eat that material. But the females will bore in and slash those woody stems, whether it's a small shrub or a small tree, in order to deposit eggs. So if it's something that you're concerned about, you might want to consider netting it. And like I said, there's a really good video that a few graduate students on the Cicada Crew did that's on our Cicada Crew website that gives a demonstration of that.
But
And
that's
what
great.
you need.
That's
Mhm.
great. So I'm going to go, so we could go to the Cicada Crew website to see how to kind of net what we think is vulnerable or that we want to protect.
Yes. Mhm.
Great. Great. Thanks for that advice. They were told that no, not to worry that the cicadas are going to get their sumac. So
Oh.
I guess better safe than sorry.
And I'm not familiar with sumacs, or do sumacs have woody branches? Yeah, so I don't know. It's really hard for me to say. In response to that, I think any kind of young woody shrub or young woody tree is susceptible.
And I don't know what county this person is from, but I had a question, and I don't, I'm sorry if I missed this in your talk, but why is the Eastern Shore missing out on this? Is it the soil?
Yeah. So no, it's not. Well, not necessarily the soil. That's what I thought at first. Is it because it's sandy soil or agricultural? And if that sumac, the person with the sumac is on the Eastern Shore, they don't have to worry because they won't see them over there. But millennia ago, when glaciers dominated, they at some point melted. And it's thought that the melting and the distribution of water in low-lying areas impacted where the periodical cicadas were able to be distributed. So they're just not on the eastern shore of Maryland at all for that reason,
Are
not for the
they,
reason of soil texture,
pardon?
not for the soil texture reason or sandy soil.
Are the annual cicadas on the Eastern Shore?
That I don't know the answer to. I
Huh.
don't know.
These annual ones. Okay, so we found out from the sumac bush owner, she or he or this person is from Anne Arundel County.
Okay, yep. So there will be cicadas in Anne Arundel County. And I think if you want to be safe rather than, you could also monitor it. They
Right.
could also go out and sort of, the thing is, if they're small enough and they get on there, they might have to pick a number of them off if they decide they want to net them. But yeah, you could take your chances with it.
Okay, great, great. And somebody's piping in here saying we do have annual cicadas on the Eastern Shore. This is coming from Queen Anne's County, so that's great.
Great.
Okay, so there seems like almost all of cicadas we saw so far this week are females. Are they more common than male, or do they come out at different times? Now, don't they have a 24-hour window there, or I don't know.
I don't think they come out at different times based on whether they're male or female. I think they all emerge, over the course of a week during that time. But then, they definitely do different things. The males will go up together and chorus in the trees and call to the females. But I do notice just anecdotally by looking at some of mine that you will see them one evening and then you just see their exoskeletons. So they've crawled up higher into the trees. They're just at the stage now where I am, where I'm not hearing them chorus yet, but I think that's to come within the next few days.
Wow, that's exciting. That's exciting, you guys. We did this presentation just in time. I thought maybe we
Yeah,
were going to be too late, but we're right.
very timely. Yeah.
Right, good. Okay, so I had a few questions. So somebody mentioned the wings. Why not the Eastern Shore? Are there any good recipes? You mentioned that, birds eat them, other things eat them, but I know that humans eat them. I haven't eaten one myself. I think the only, I forget what insect. I know I've eaten a grasshopper, but I haven't eaten a cicada. So are there recipes on the Cicada Crew website or?
There are. There are recipes on the Cicada Crew website, and I understand there's a, a resource there that leads you to a cicada recipe book that was put together by a previous entomology student at the University of Maryland 17 years ago when she took this course. So, and I understand from other students who have eaten periodical cicadas that the texture is a little bit like shrimp, and they tend to pick up the spices that they're cooked in. So yeah, so a number of students have tried them just within the past few days, and there are recipes on there if you want to take a look.
Great.
I wouldn't recommend it if you have shellfish allergies because of the proteins. And also another thing to think about is, Agnes mentioned, is that pretty much all wildlife will eat them, but so will your cats and dogs. And they can eat a couple of them, but I wouldn't let them fill up on them because they can cause some problems for cats and dogs internally.
Those cicadas are only dessert only for those domestic pets.
Just a
I
few.
got you. Just a few. Somebody graciously put the link to the cookbook, the cicada cookbook, in the chat. So if y'all want to click on that link in there, it'll be ready for you when we're done. Okay, yearly still. Okay, so I had a question about the yearly. If you have any more questions, please put them in the chat. Sorry, I know that I have a question here, but if you have any questions, please. I really appreciate the discussion, you guys. I really like the sharing. I really like the questions. So keep them coming if you have any more things you want to share with Lindsay, or questions, curiosities you have. One of mine is those yearly cicadas. Do they, okay, I think I might be answering the question in my mind, but the yearly cicadas kind of have the same like habitat needs, right? They're underground. Like, are they the same kind of?
Well, their development time is a little shorter, so I believe it's 2 to 8 years, was it, for the annual cicadas, and they also emerge later in the summer, mid-July through August. You'll hear the people refer to them as dog day cicadas, and if I think back as to whether or not I've seen any in the past, I think they're harder to spot, both because they're camouflaged and they tend to blend in with those green and brown bodies, and they're also fast flyers. So unlike the periodical cicadas, which are sort of bright orange with those bright red eyes and klutzy flyers, you'll see them just, on the ground, or not flying away as you approach them. The annual cicadas are a lot harder to spot.
Oh, okay. Okay. That makes sense. Oh, interesting. All right, you guys, this has been great. Lindsay, I can't even figure out which point I thought was the most curious. I loved hearing the sound of the 3 different cicadas that are going to be emerging. I appreciate that. And I'm sure that those sounds can also be found on the website if you need something to help you go to bed at night. You want the cicada chorus. I'm sure that maybe that's going to be some ringtone or something. Let us know if you find a cicada ringtone. We'd love to share that with everybody.
Great idea.
And, I liked that you showed us all the 3 different ones. I really liked that. And I think another thing that I thought was very valuable for my curiosity was the difference between the annual and the periodic, like just even showing that picture. Oh, okay. So they don't have the red eyes. I don't want to repeat what you said, but that whole camouflaging thing, oh, that makes sense why I haven't seen them and just heard them, growing up and stuff, playing outside more often than being in the office when I was a kid. So Really great presentation. We are really glad that the UMD cicada crew is there to help all of us understand the cicadas and guide us through watching the cicadas and ensuring we're keeping them safe and ensuring we're keeping our valuable woody plants safe and that we're finding new things to eat.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay.